Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event commemorating the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. My name is Jen. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications here at Grameen, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be kicking things off today with an introduction from Zubaida Bai, the President and CEO of Grameen Foundation. So Zubaida, when you're ready, take it away.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Zubaida Bai, and I'm the President and CEO of Grameen Foundation. This year, the theme for the International Day of Eradication of Poverty is putting dignity into practice for all. The word dignity actually makes me think of a woman I spoke to at a refugee camp a few years ago. And the question she asked me still resonates. Do I already have dignity? Or do I already not have dignity is the question she asked me. It was a very sharp, deep, and interesting question for me at that point. Who are we as a global community to say who has dignity and who doesn't? At Grameen Foundation, it's not about providing dignity. It's not about empowerment. It's about creating an enabling environment around the woman so she can show up with her full power and potential. So often women are the backbones of their households doing unending and unpaid work to help their families survive. They are capable, resourceful, persistent. If anything, women and rocks, in my mind, are the two most resilient things on earth. As Professor Yunus, the inspiration for Grameen, said, the poor are the world's greatest entrepreneurs. They innovate every day to survive. Grameen therefore focuses on increasing the agency and decision-making abilities of a woman. We focus on growing income-generating opportunities and entrepreneurs, and we focus on resilience, which is the ability for them to overcome shocks. While every woman we work with is an inspiration, we are today going to focus on a particular smallholder farmer called Comfort, a cacao farmer in Ghana who has lived through many shocks and setbacks. In 2018, Grameen and its partners launched a program to design in a way that we increase climate resilience for rural smallholder farmers, especially women. Some of you may remember Comfort, who was a part of the program. We have featured her in a short video at that time, in which she spoke about the impact the program had on her life. Today, we will show you that video now, and a little later, we will check in with Comfort via a new video we filmed just a couple of weeks ago. We will also hear from Alfred Eboa, Grameen's Director of Operations and Country Director for Sub-Saharan Africa, and Lakshmi Iyer, our Director of Innovations in Agriculture. But first, let's head back to 2018, when we first worked with Comfort.
Harunye maruna, harunye marunya, harunye marunya, harunye marunya, harunye marunya.
Midin de comfort appear. Nama sitting enkoye kura. Miwie ya chire na miwie na papa wuye na me maame so miwie school no wuye na be ma no so eja enkwara no egu me so na okọ ni krom na satuma na mi niska na me hwe me ma no tese aduane ye bedi ekura no na ayede ye bo apesi se me mai ka se ye ko school ntimi mi niska ma wo ma mi nibi Minye bi fama womo. Ti me ho achire me to da esu mitimi su saa di awiro ho me kwaketa so a me na. Enu nti etimi ma me so te ankasa. Ne fare ban no esitie. Enso me de me ho bo FDP no a womo ekire me no. Ensakraya aba ekuaye nu. Ama ekuya na me ye no ekoso pa. Me fa ne say na minim kwan ya fa so gu fertilizer na minim kwan ya fa so a ye twitwa afuom na minim kwan ya fa so a me fa ne say efuo na se dodo a na omo ba ya omo be ma ye nkyerɛkyerɛ te se fa de dem de ho me ho eye mafui first na nipa kokora ye mfrɛ me se nso de eboa me na mo yintimi ye sikani ye frɛ me sikani ewo Jerusalem ha enam amama biebie enwuma bebre wo fie me ye costo me sa ka banku eton me sa enoamo eton enwuma ahodo bebre na etimi aboa me ama metimi aya aka ma sitinam nti dem de be ho me ho no oh se die me hwa ma sitinam a menya nigia nkasa ai me oba me wotumi metimi ye ne ma fi se adwuma be ma ye no me a me ye oba yi me nsusu metimi eye nti ni wotumi
Great. As you all just saw, we support women entrepreneurs and farmers in achieving 3 outcomes along their path to economic success: income and entrepreneurship, agency, and resilience. Clearly, the video illustrates how Grameen's program that Comfort had joined increased her income and opened doors to entrepreneurship. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Alfred Yaboa, our Director of Programs and Africa Office Director, to tell you a little bit more about Comfort and the initiative she participated in. Alfred's remarks will be highlighted with the new video remarks from Comfort, in which I think you will clearly see that even 5 years later, she's benefiting from the agency and resilience that she had gained. Over to you, Alfred.
Thank you very much, Zubeida. So I would like to provide a bit of background on Comfort and the area where she's from. She's a single mother of 6 who was considered an outcast in her community. She told us that she struggled to feed her children many nights, and she was just starting to learn how to farm. Farm productivity that year was already low, due in part to climate change. The temperatures were unusually warm, and there was more rainfall than usual. But the farm was all she had, without the additional income from a partner. She just had no options. She was the ideal candidate for our personalized farm development plans. This program combined the power of technology, satellite data, and trusted human networks, providing her with in-depth coaching sessions based on what her farm needed. The Farm Development Plan, which Comfort refers to as FDP, is a decision-making tool that enables assessments of soil data and crops, tried and tested agricultural practices to grow their yields, and financial investments. A last-mile field agent, Jeffrey, seen here, worked with Comfort to create an accurate social and economic profile. Jeffrey made an assessment of Comfort Farm to identify the success of practices she is adopting and which she needs support with.
And I'm a demi home ball, Garabe, FDP. Omo chira me, kuya ho, and she say, Bia, said you see a teacher, young fool, said you see a ball a drew, until a mamma phone, a mere terminal, me phone, corner, Nima Casa, Madame home ball woman. A boy me ye, I'm a phone, so metimia, I'm a phone, I come. A John and me dear, and so me John so a corner name. Me tomo, me ya jollof, me ya wache, na ma chi na ma koko na ma chi fish. Because so and so a quanin is a meton suo, drinking in a meton be, and Yama would draw, and I'm a ton or Mijadium. Nina tumpom, a bram and them a bow woman. And tis a war. I was also so obedient to say a pabi bar, chroma, fair nidia, and Yakumapa, and so say no. Mitimiti cocoa no just a feeling quanary and I'm at cocoa no bear 30 bucks.
Okay, I'll continue with my comments. So as she described, we worked with Comforts to develop a multi-year business plan based on her socioeconomic and productive profile and the results of the assessment Jeffrey carried on Comfort's farm. She received 11 monitoring and coaching sessions from Jeffrey to guide her on a personal level. The training ranged from good agricultural practices and on livelihood diversification. Comfort implemented the low-hanging fruits based on the recommended and promoted practices. And some of these promoted practices included pruning, application of fertilizer, and also maintaining good sanitation on her farm. She also diversified her livelihoods to include trading of fast-moving consumer goods, and as she noted, operating a co-store in her community. When we spoke with her, this training had served her well, allowing her to withstand shocks.
America crane, Mefuno, and more Baba say a funo. And until now, I had din amame. Nanso, it's on some of them a ball that bay for no. And now one of them fire and chile muntino. Omo mammy say, as I said, Nico Kono, Mitra. It's on say, or how can see it? And now to me, I just say, I am a nibble some. Yes, and no auntie na me wa kurase ha. Nso omo e ka se mi ntwa me ka me sisi so. Eji de omo kire me no etum e ma mi twa mafuo no. Na mi twa mafuo no so no. Aboa me ama se mi hwe se de mafuo no esi ya na me akoso na me nim se tie bia. Ama se mi hwe se de mafuo no esi ya na me akoso na me nim se tie bia.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. We're going to pause this video, and Alfred, we're going to go back to your remarks. We'll be sure to send the full video to everyone who participated today. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So Grameen took a holistic approach to support Comfort by clearing pathways to economic success by dismantling the barriers that stood in her way. We strengthened local partners and resources, including the use of the Farm Development Plan, to more fully support her. Grameen and its partners stood by Comfort every step of the way to ensure she's set up for success, even as climate change is creating more uncertainty for farmers like her. Let me now introduce Lakshmi, our Director for Innovations in Agriculture, to talk about how we are taking what we have learned from these programs in Ghana, India, and elsewhere, and scaling them to help more women like Comfort achieve lasting economic success. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alfred. And as Alfred said, we at Grameen are working to make sure that many women like Comfort can improve their climate resilience, and not just in Ghana, but worldwide. We've always worked on building resilience for rural farming households. That's not new for us. Whether it's been encouraging them to intercrop, diversifying incomes, and/or by finding financial inclusion solutions. We work with women smallholder farmers globally, and we're currently working across East and West Africa, South and Southeast Asia, as well as parts of Latin America. We strengthen and elevate women's voices, enabling them to participate with their full power in the agricultural value chains that they are engaged in, providing rural communities with the tools that they need to withstand shocks and stressors, and really pivot towards additional streams of income, as we saw Comfort being able to do. We've always taken a holistic approach to our work, a real dynamic holistic approach. We continue to apply this lens for our climate resilience work as well. And the nexus of gender, climate, agriculture, and finance is core to our work. One way we work in this nexus is by supporting key players, such as agricultural small and medium enterprises and financial service providers, to really meet women where they are and provide business development products and services, and/or to generate new ones to benefit and really benefit women smallholder farmers. It's this type of work with these key players that allows us to zoom in on climate resilience and adaptation building in a sustainable fashion, as they're the ones who will ultimately and sustainably and over time continue to provide women farmers with the tools and techniques required to combat and withstand shocks and stressors, but also more importantly, rebound and pivot towards diversified income streams. So we'll continue supporting women like Comfort through our work with local partners, as they are rooted in vulnerable communities where climate change will continue to shock and stress on a daily basis. And just as we heard Comfort discussing what she experienced, the spectrum of what communities experience on a regular basis could include something like a new pest and a disease outbreak as a result of increased temperatures. But on the other extreme, it could also include weather-based conditions such as prolonged drought. And we see that this is very prevalent across rain-fed agricultural communities. They're the most vulnerable, right? And it's the women that are within these agricultural communities that are the most vulnerable. They're experiencing these challenges more and more frequently. So what have we done? What are we doing? We've worked with women's groups, village savings and loan associations, self-help groups, other pre-existing groups across communities to lend and save for times when individual households may be experiencing a challenge. This has been really core to our resilience work. We've provided SMS-based information to smallholder coconut farmers regarding coconut pest and disease outbreaks in the Philippines, for example, so that they can be aware and work towards preventing devastation with the practices that they're learning about. And like me, many of us sitting in the global north take weather updates for granted. we've seen on the ground through our work with local partners that better weather forecasting and getting that information into farmers' hands can improve outcomes related to climate change and weather events. Our goal for this holistic approach is really to ensure that women like Comfort will always have a plan B, potentially even a plan C to fall back on, or have the tools to develop those plans when they feel that they really need one. And we'll continue to do all of this and more and ensure that the ecosystem is able to meet women where they are and increase their opportunities for entrepreneurship and an income, elevate their agency, and increase their resilience. Digital agricultural advisory services and digital innovations, these have always been among Grameen's strengths, such as the Farm Development Plan, or FDP, that Comfort was discussing. And we'll continue to work to expand access to these services so that the most vulnerable are able to gain access to them. We'll make sure our products are designed with women at the center and to connect our clients with appropriate ecosystem players so that their work can be scaled and modified appropriately. For example, we're in the process of putting together a toolkit that will be available for digital advisory service providers so that they can keep women smallholder farmers at the forefront of the material they design and deliver. So as a result of the holistic work that we do that centers on climate resilience for women smallholder farmers, the women we serve are able to break the cycle of poverty. Now we'll go ahead and show the last video segment of how Comfort is doing just that. And then after that, we'd like to open it up for questions. And we invite you to put your questions in the Zoom Q&A. Thank you very much.
I'm ready for how say what Mefu Biano. And now that my sitting Biano. Let me a Gina Brane. If you say, how not me fair mono, Nanya, but same palm and more Casempono. Ya me secretary. Jerusalem, Abidjan, Kasape, me toko Emma company no, and also the Sikanket Abrame. Me so a boame pa, a boame. Say na, me say me a powerful woman, me powerful woman, a broso, if you say, me obabesia, ni beme bia. Namia or how be ba Namasum and ama Namsa and Tretra Modern Mamma and so me Quaswa this and Tretra and so Tretra a hammer and say almost so and you know not Sabaya almost so how be Baba 2 or more and now say Bema been pony woman chair almost so ever to me a Gina Brand say no I'm out Korea me Timmy Crano. Obi a bume ya sanso kra fere manim enu nti me powerful.
All right, thanks everyone. Please add any questions you may have to the chat or in the Q&A.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you everyone for joining. We really look forward to answering your questions, and we all really hope that you can share the story of Comfort. The recording of this will be available for you. And really at Grameen Foundation, we are all about transforming systems for women like Comfort. And we really hope we can increase their income, agency, and resilience, just like Comfort. And we really hope to reach millions more over the next decade. Over to all of you for any questions you may have.
Zubaida, there's a question here. Do you have a Grameen presence in Rwanda?
We do not currently have a Grameen office presence in Rwanda, but that does not stop us from working in Rwanda. We have 6 country offices globally, which is India, Philippines, Ghana, Uganda, and Kenya. But we also work at any given point in time. We have projects ongoing in 12 to 13 countries because the core of our work happens with local partners. And we are pretty certain that we have partners in Rwanda through whom we can execute projects.
Thank you. Another question here from Stephanie. She was wondering where the women get the initial investments to open a farm, and then how that timeline works with the training that we provide.
Okay, so the farm development plan basically is a digital tool that we equip a network of last mile field agents to work with farmers. Grameen does not directly give funds to these farmers. Rather, what we do is to digitalize their activities, their farming activities, get a snapshot of their total family income and expenditure, basically what their cash flow looks like. Once we have that data, we make it available to other actors in the ecosystem, like financial service providers, who will leverage that data, that visibility that now they have into the farming activities of smallholder farmers like Comfort to inform their credit decision-making to them. So it's a way of opening up visibility around their business and then getting other actors within the ecosystem to provide capital to them to implement the recommended good agricultural practices that the farm development plan, seeks to achieve. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. Another question on the farm development plan specifically. Could you speak to where we have had or plan to have kind of these agriculture focused programs in the countries that we serve? So where can we find these types of programs?
Yeah, so the farm development plan comes in different forms. So we have the farm management plan, which is more adapted and suited for food crop value chains. And then the farm development plan is more for cash crop value chains. We have other similar digital tools that are even used in the coconut value chain in the Philippines. So in the countries where we work, we are able to work with local partners, basically to adapt the concept. For us, it's more of a concept in terms of how we effectively use digital innovation to get data to drive decision-making in the agricultural value chain so that smallholder farmer can be a meaningful actor for other players within that space to either provide services or products to on credit or even, provide support services to enable them thrive, increase their productivity, their incomes, and their resilience. So we believe that we could leverage the use of some of these digital innovation plus a human touch. And as you saw in the video, we had Jeffrey who worked with Comfort every step of the way to make sure that at least they're identifying those low-hanging fruits, those good agricultural practices that are not capital intensive, so that at least she could start those ones like pruning, applying fertilizer, and then when she's able to increase her productivity, she can then rely on some of these income probably diversify a livelihood. So we would say that ours is more of a concept and model that we are able to adapt for use in different countries across the globe. Thank you.
Here's another one. I can't imagine that a shift in the powerfulness of women is well met by existing power structures within villages. How is that managed?
That's a good question. And I think that Grameen have already stepped back to really learn from how we are able to bring, especially male champions, spouses of these women that we work with on board. So we present the business case for them. So they see it as a win-win. And that when their spouses are financially empowered, ultimately the household and community are empowered. So we have specific male engagement strategies that we implement as part of our programming. There are specific intra-household dialogue, community gender dialogues that we facilitate to basically talk about some of the difficult, gender-related topics that hitherto communities wouldn't want to engage with. But then through these specific male engagement strategies, what we are seeing is that males have actually been at the forefront for even pushing the dial when it comes to interventions that ultimately seek to financially and economically empower women. So for gender is something that Grameen leads with. We take very seriously, and we see gender as relation, and therefore men and boys are seen as a crucial part of the discussion and also in terms of our interventions. Thank you.
A few people asked related questions, so I'm going to combine them here. Could one of you speak to financial products, services, and literacy and the role that plays in increasing agency and resilience? And then how do we actually create the access as well?
Yeah, let me go. So for Grameen Foundation, ours is more about creating the business case, especially for financial service providers at all tiers. So this could be even local money lenders, it could be microfinance institutions, it could be savings and loans association. The ultimate objective here is to create that business case, speak the language that the financial service providers want to hear, and therefore work with them every step of the way to develop, women-centered financial products and services that do no harm, and products and services that are affordable and safe, especially for women entrepreneurs, women agribusinesses, women smallholder farmers. So one way by which we do this is to work with this FSP, leveraging our philanthropic grants through different financial instruments. Some of these include growth guarantees. It includes, bonds, but there are different mechanisms by which we are able to work with these financial service providers, basically to bring down their interest rates to provide safe and affordable credit to these women groups that we work with. And we have seen digital innovation as a very critical means by which we are able to extend reach. We know even in the remotest of rural communities where there are no smartphones, you still will see a simple feature phone, and therefore women can use a USSD code to access a loan on a phone. And in some countries, as I recall, we have provided some funding support to fintechs, local fintechs, to, for example, come up, design women-centered financial services and products, and also to provide credit to women through USSD. So digital means are one of the ways we are seeing as an effective mechanism to increase reach and access, especially for rural women, to some of these innovative financial services. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. Lakshmi, I think this one's for you. So poverty seems to be increasing in the small island developing nations due to climate change impacts, and now inflation after the COVID pandemic. Do you have suggestions on how we can help poorest women, particularly with children, and in the cases where they do not own the land that they farm on?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I can start, and maybe Alfred, you'd want to supplement. But really, I think this is a conundrum everywhere. Climate change is affecting the entire globe. We're seeing it in various different ways. What's really surprising with the Pacific Islands is that there can be strong entrepreneurship type opportunities if we are able to partner with the appropriate agricultural, small and medium enterprises or financial service providers. These are the entry points to really being able to support women in the most appropriate ways. And it's whether women own land or don't, and we have this in multiple different projects, where we've seen that women don't own the land and they don't have rights to multiple different, or they don't have access to multiple different tools and technologies. It's really about working with these various different service providers and showcasing that these are barriers, but these women are also clients, and that there is a very strong business case to be made to generate additional products and services that may support these smallholder women's needs. And I think, you know, with the projects that we have ongoing at the moment, if I could just point to a project that we have in India at the moment, where we're supporting farmer producer organizations and really aiming to mainstream gender across these businesses. It's really about shifting the mindset with respect to the business proposition and supporting women as well to understand that there is value for them to be involved and to be members of these associations. So it's really kind of synergizing these two value propositions and supporting women to work with entities and these entities to work with women, and meet women where they are. I'll just pause, Alfred, if you want to add anything.
Absolutely. I think I will start from where you ended. It's about identifying the areas on the value chain where these women are contributing to the entire value chain. So it's not necessarily always in production. Sometimes some crop value chains realize that they are more into processing, harvesting, marketing. So for us, it's a holistic approach. Identify especially these women where they are playing critical roles along the value chain and providing the needed support by connecting them to critical value chain actors, ecosystem actors, to make sure that they are able to increase their productivity, their incomes, their resiliency, and their agency. So that is why we know some of these things are beyond us. It's more in the realm of advocacy when it comes to land rights, because then you need to bring other actors, you know, in the conversation to make that happen. But whilst we wait for that to be able to deal adequately with the land rights issues, we feel that some women are playing critical roles along the value chain and can still be supported. So that's what we do. And the question around access of financial services, I did mention that there are digital means by which we are reaching, especially last mile rural communities. But one channel we found very useful is through mobile money agents. In Africa, you know, we have these last mile food agents providing doorstep financial services in rural communities. They have also been seen as a very critical point for delivering some of these menu of financial services in rural communities, whilst at the same time building a business case for them by serving as digital financial services agent operating micro businesses in their communities. So just wanted to add that in terms of how we are.
Could both of you speak a little bit more about the technology or the apps or the platforms that we use? You know, we speak about digitization a lot, but can you dig a little bit more into what that looks like for our clients?
Well, let me start. So again, the way we see digitalization or the use of digital innovation as a means to an end. So for us, it is that woman entrepreneur, that woman smallholder farmer, who is still at the center of all that we do. If we bring in digital innovation, it's only supposed to be an enabler. And again, what is the end goal for using some of this digital innovation? It is because we want to have data on these farming households. We want to have data on these women entrepreneurs. And why do we collect this data? At the end of the day, we want to create visibility into the activities because they don't have the collateral, for example, to secure a loan or a credit from a financial service provider. And when you ask them, they tell you, look, these groups are just risky groups. And they would want you to speak a language that they understand. How do you share risk with them? if it's an FSP, a microfinance institution, how do you share risk? How do you reduce their risk level? So we see the use of some of these digital innovations as only a means by which we harness and harvest data on the groups that we work with, and then put them in meaningful ways or trends to these ecosystem actors. It could even be an input, agro input dealers. I mean, a supplier of agro input like fertilizer or seed. Sometimes they just want to forecast the demand for their services for a particular area. Once we have data, we understand what the input needs are for a group of women farmer producer organization in northern Ghana, for instance. We are able to make this data available, and then they plan with it for the upcoming cropping season. It could be an equipment service provider, tractor services, plowing. Again, how many farmers require these services? And where is the data to support that, in fact, there is this demand? We've been able to aggregate this demand. So that is how we see the use of digital innovation. It is the data and how that data drives decision at all levels. Even for the farmers, how do we give back that data we collect on them to inform certain good agricultural practices they can adopt based on what we know of their farms? At the agribusiness level, how can they plan to offtake, provide markets to these women farmer groups? To the open market, how do we use that as business insight to inform our supply chain? So everybody benefits from the use of some of these digital innovations and the data that comes out of it, and becomes a win-win-win situation for everybody involved in the ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah, Alfred, if I could just build on what you're saying as well, I think there's such a key piece associated with digital innovations in terms of access and accessibility. And largely what we see with the populations that we work with is that it's not only just providing this digital innovation, it's really centering in on providing digital literacy, along with other types of curriculum that will help enable communities themselves to pick and choose, to leverage the types of information service providers that they would like to, really hone in on what are those options that make the most sense for them. We know that in some countries, there's a plethora of digital innovations, bombarding farmers on a regular basis. On the other hand, we see extreme scenarios where there's not enough infrastructure. It's really about supporting the smallholder farmers who are out there day in and day out with digital literacy components to enable once they do have access, enable and enhance the ability to leverage the applications and the innovations and the various ways in which local partners, agricultural SMEs, and FSPs are supporting them or aiming to support them.
Thank you both. Okay, so I think we have time for about 3 more questions, although we're really excited to see everyone asking such wonderful questions in the Q&A. So the first question I've got is, can you talk a little bit more about what kind of organizations make up our local partnerships?
Yeah, so it varies. So depending on the intervention, in some countries, we have worked with local fintechs, local architects, local civil society organizations, financial service providers at all tiers. As I mentioned, we have worked with rural banks, we've worked with microfinance institutions, local money lenders, and in some cases, we've even worked with research firms and organizations because, critical to our intervention is basically our barriers and opportunities assessment that we do in inception of every program to understand the landscape, to understand the pinpoint. So in some geographies, we really work with research, organization. And in some countries, we've actually been part of advocacy. So we have been part of working groups at government, ministries, departments, and agencies levels to input into policies based on data that we have on our programming. So I'll say the spectrum of local partners that we work with really varies, and it does depend on the particular intervention that we are deploying. Thank you. And even for we also work with very vulnerable communities, like refugee settlements in East Africa, for instance. So there, for instance, there are mandatory, kind of statutory organizations like the Office of the Prime Minister who oversees, those refugee settlements that you necessarily need to work with in tandem to synchronize all of the interventions that are ongoing in some of these. And we even have agent network managers, because we believe in both digital innovation plus the human touch. And therefore, sometimes we even work with existing agent network managers who are already managing this network of last mile field agents to build capacity to make sure that they are more robust and they are more effective at what they deliver. So I would say it actually depends on the dynamics and the kind of interventions. Thank you.
All right, the next one is, what has been, or can you share any experiences or stories about changing gender norms, especially in the agriculture sector? What have we found that's really worked?
Well, this is a very soft spot for me, because for most of our interventions, I always make sure that there is that gender lens to whatever we are doing. As I recall, there was the agrotech project, for instance, in Ghana, where initially we had basically only males attending meetings, trainings, that we worked with our local license buying companies, for example, in Ghana. So we had to query why this is happening. Apparently, the timings of the meetings, for instance, were not conducive, convenient for the women farmers who actually work with their spouses on their farms. So most of the time, you see that it is the males that show up for this meeting. And when you ask them, they promise you that when they go back, they'll cascade their training. But when you follow up, it doesn't happen. Why? Because sometimes they just want to keep some of the information to themselves. So this was a way by which we instituted this intra-household dialogues to understand why women were not showing up for group trainings, for example. And we had to amend the timings of the meetings and again, build a business case for the males to see why sometimes they need to come along with their females, or even sometimes delegate their spouses, their other women actors in the house to attend the meetings on their behalf. And we saw some great prospects come out from that approach. And in subsequent meetings, we realized that women were even co-facilitating, training for other groups based on knowledge that they have acquired. We also have our gender and power dynamics training that we implement as part of our programming, and this is a carefully thought out capacity building training that we deploy with all of our partners. This could be local NGOs, local civil society organizations, to make sure that we are starting with their staff that we are going to work with. Because Grameen does not do deep field level, on the boots implementation. We normally would do this through a partnership model. So do our partners even have the right attitude, the right mindset when it comes to dealing with harmful gender norms? And therefore, we deploy these gender and power dynamics training, even with our local partners, and see a way by which we are able to monitor and supervise. They even cascading these kind of trainings in different formats to the women groups that they work with in the farmer producer organizations. So we have found very innovative ways to make sure that most of our programs are very gender responsive, very gender sensitive, and has this gender lens to whatever we do. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just add a few examples, perhaps, based on what Alfred is suggesting in our India program, where we're strengthening farmer producer organizations. We did deploy gender and power dynamics training to board members and leadership members of the FPO in of the farmer producer organization to increase the numbers of women shareholders, to get them oriented towards that mindset, and to place women on these boards, and in the hope that it will become a more inclusive board. Thereby, there will be role models for women, smallholder farmers, to join hands and become shareholders of the farmer producer organization. That's a starting block. And we feel like, we know that there are pieces of the modules that need to be, taken to household level. So there we have the inter-household dialogues that are also deployed. And we also know that it's even a matter of shifting the mindset of some of the women within the community too, for them to be able to see that there is value, for them to attend some of these farmer producer organization meetings, and that the FPO will provide services and products that are attuned to what they are hoping for and what they want. A lot of times we notice that that's about reducing drudgery. So does the farmer producer organization have these tools and technologies that they can rent out to these women that will reduce their labor time burden? And without that kind of value addition, we're not able to see these two things link up. So even though there's a large number, what we see in phase 1 of that project is, although there's a lot of women who are signing up to be shareholder farmer members, there's perhaps not as active of a participation as we would like. So in this phase 2 of the project, what we're aiming to do is to actively look, re-engage, really kind of delve deep with women, community members, their households, and the farmer producer organization to see what more is it that we need to be doing to bring all of these pieces together and ensure that these women become active participants and shareholder members. And what more is it that FPOs can be doing to ensure that that takes place? So, it's oftentimes it's a process, and there are stages in that process, and there are building blocks along the way.
Thank you both. So we're going to end with this question. Besides donating money, what are other ways we can support the Grameen cause? And while you're thinking about that, I'd also like to invite anyone on the chat to supplement the answers that either of you would like to provide with ways that they have supported the Grameen cause.
Okay, so we have our Bankers Without Borders initiative. These are ways by which we leverage the skill sets, pro bono, basically pro bono, of private sector actors who are, interested in providing technical assistance to social enterprises, micro, small, medium-scale enterprises, especially in the global south, and be able to support them in terms of how they're able to build business models, even take some of their solutions to markets, and other TA support, technical assistance support to enable them thrive, to increase productivity, income, entrepreneurship, agency, and also resilience. So for us, even sometimes, making available your skill sets, your knowledge to support some of these groups that we work with are invaluable ways that remain lasting in the minds of the groups that we work with. So it's not always money, as you rightly said. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think that wraps it up as we're coming right at time here. But really wonderful, wonderful questions, wonderful discussions. So thank you.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. I think based on the questions that you asked, clearly we can glean that women's climate resilience and adaptation is very critical, especially during these times, and that we are seeing that women are more likely to bear the brunt of household coping mechanism. They are also likely to suffer domestic violence, as we see in some of our program areas, as a result of climate-induced stresses on household, Sometimes even women have domestic responsibility that limits their options to adapt, their livelihood strategies. And what we are saying is that gender inequalities also leave women ill-equipped when extreme events hits. Example, when there's a social norm that prevents them from even learning a new skill or attending training. So clearly, we are seeing that women climate resilience and adaptation is something that we need to pay close attention to, and that is exactly what Grameen does as a pace setter in this space. I would want to thank you all for joining the call today. I want to reiterate that Grameen Foundation is about transforming systems for women in finance and also in agriculture. We exist to handhold women to ensure that they have an increased income, agency, and resilience. We are all about investing in a power, but not without male engagement, as I already mentioned. We also ask you for your support in diverse ways in investing in the power of more women like Comfort, as you saw in the video. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.